So in the first scene, when Jean and Berenger meet at the cafe, there's a discussion about why Berenger's life is falling apart, why Jean is clearly superior, how he suggests that that Berenger sort of start to become cultured and pick up some intellectual interests and take care of himself better and eat better and stop drinking so much. And then the rhinoceros comes through, and what do we see? Well, we see again that Jean has difficulty with this. This isn't in the plans. The plans were not for the rhinoceros to show up and interrupt the day. There are logic issues. Where did the rhinoceros come from? How many horns did the rhinoceros have? What kind of things, are going to change now that the rhinoceros are here? Berenger seems somewhat unbothered. He makes some jokes. He says, does it really matter? What's the point in worrying about it? If the rhinoceros is here, it's here. And the fight between the two of them is that for Berenger, it's not terribly important, and he thinks that Jean is making a big fuss about things for nothing. And Jean is very upset about this and basically feels insulted, feels as if Berenger is acting in a terrible manner and has really hurt him a great deal, and sort of doesn't really want to talk to him anymore. There's a big fight, and they're not going to agree with each other. And the scene ends with the two of them sort of going their separate ways. And this is an important scene because, in a way, what I think it shows is that as somebody who has never considered anything like this, who is not really wanting to consider it at all, he's sort of, in a haze of alcohol, in a haze of self-doubt, not knowing who he is. A major life event like this doesn't faze him much because he's already trying to figure out what to do with himself. He doesn't really have time for what everybody else is doing, what else is happening, right, out in the rest of the world. He's unbothered because there's no reason to be bothered. He doesn't even know who he is, so why should it bother him that other people, right, or that rhinoceros are running around, right? In this first scene, nobody knows that this rhinoceros is a person. Everybody just assumes it's a rhinoceros running around willy-nilly. Nobody knows where it's come from. Jean has a big problem with this. For Jean, life is ordered. Life is organized. Life makes sense. And suddenly, right, a rhinoceros has come in, and very much the way that Camus presented it to us in the myth of Sisyphus, he asks questions and there are no answers to the questions, right? Jean isn't so much okay with everything being the way that it is. He just simply doesn't care that there aren't any answers at this point in time because there aren't any answers for his life in any way, right? And it's not that he's accepted it. We can see that, Berenger is not a happy person, right, in general. He looks around him and he sees no answers, but he doesn't have any answers for his own life. He just doesn't have answers in general. And rather than accepting it, he's just sort of fallen in and is in despair. And despair builds upon despair, builds upon despair. If there are no answers, there are no answers. Jean is being confronted, on the other hand, with despair that he has no answers for. The rest of his life feels like it's going well, and this is the first thing that's really come up that he doesn't know how to deal with. He can look at Berenger and say he is superior. He is morally better. He is physically better. And this is an answer, right? That, if poor Berenger is a drunk, he himself is not. But now he looks out and sees a rhinoceros and sees things going on that he has no answers for, and he doesn't know what to do. And this is now, properly speaking, an existential crisis and a crisis of the absurd. What's going to happen if he doesn't have answers? What's he going to do if he can't tell if a rhinoceros has one horn or two horns? What's he going to do if he can't figure out where the rhinoceros is from or what to do with it? And so I think that right there is a pretty major crisis. And what we see is that for the two of them, one wants answers, wants order, wants normal to be restored, and is not prepared to deal with a crisis that doesn't really have good responses. And one doesn't have his life together at all, doesn't really know what's going on, and is unable to come up with any answers anyway. And so, far from being okay with what's happening, he at least is able to sort of weather the storm because it's always storming. When we get to the second portion of this week, we get to the office and we learn that somebody has turned into a rhinoceros, right? That it's actually a person who decided to become a rhinoceros, and we start realizing that people have decided that they want to become rhinoceros. Everybody in the office sort of has to confront this idea. And for Berenger, again, he isn't really that bothered by it. He doesn't understand why anybody would do such a thing, but it's okay. It doesn't really matter. They've solved the issue of whether there are or are not rhinoceros. This is enough of an answer for him. For Daisy as well. She knows now that there's rhinoceros. And what we learn from Daisy is Daisy just wants to exist. She wants to be with other people. She likes Berenger enough that that's fine, right? Berenger is, he's happy with way things are, going. He still hasn't figured out his life, but he is working on it, right? When we get to next week, we're going to see more about what Daisy wants, what Berenger wants, what Jean wants, and we're going to see how do they eventually get to the resolutions that they get to. Sort of the last video I want to do this week, and I understand this is kind of a short week of videos because we're making our way through something that's a little bit more complicated. In the next video, I am going to present something that I'd like your groups to discuss, and as well, things I'd like to look forward to for next week. So, next video.